David Campbell Bannerman. He belongs to a thing called the Conservative Democratic Organisation. This is a fringe organisation that loves Boris Johnson, the sort of thing that Nadine Dorries would support, I suppose. And he has said in a Twitter post, he's called on Rishi Sunak to resign. He has said to the Telegraph, once again, local elections under Sunak have been absolutely disastrous. A year ago, we would have won seats. And under Rishi Sunak, he says, we lost 1,000 councillors. Is that right? This time is the worst performance in 40 years so far. Sunak is not a natural campaigner and wasn't even seen campaigning. The lesson is clear. Enough of this disastrous, visionless, vacuous leadership. Rishi must go and go now. This is a reality check for Conservative MPs. Enough avoidance of the problem. If you don't dump Sunak now, the party is finished for at least a decade or more, and the country is in danger under a hard left woke Labour. Do the necessary and do it quickly. And you know, the point is, the people who are putting out these posts are the extremists, and not the centre ground. And the centre ground is simply keeping mum. I suspect quite a lot of them didn't even bother to vote. Lee Anderson has been vocal as well in an interview on Sky News. The Reform UK MP and ex-Conservative, ex-Labour member has said, we're going up and the Conservative Party is coming down. We're going to meet at some point. We've already met it in places in the North and in the Midlands. I think with a general election 4 or 5 months away, then we're going to surpass them. Well, you know, he shouldn't crow too much yet, because the Reform Party, though on a sizable percentage in the polling, has still not reached the high point of UKIP. And it's only significant because the Conservative Party is falling so dramatically. But Andrea Jenkins, I should add, has also called on Sunak to quit and says it's unlikely he will face a no confidence vote. I think she's got a double negative there. It's unlikely he will face a no confidence vote, but I think that means she doesn't think he's going to face a no confidence vote. She says, I'm not sure that colleagues are going to be putting the letters in, so we're going with what we've got. I think we shouldn't get rid of Boris Johnson I think we shouldn't have got rid of Boris Johnson in the first place, but we are where we are, and it's looking unlikely that MPs are going to put the letters in, so we've got to pull together. I don't quite know what she's trying to say there. The Conservative Party chair, Richard Holden, has played down the loss of Blackpool South, but the loss of Blackpool South was inevitable because of the stupidity of the previous incumbent, Scott Benton. And Richard Holden has acknowledged that by pointing out that in the particular circumstance of not only the previous MP having been forced to stand down, but also during the campaign in the neighbouring seat, a former Conservative MP, Mark Menzies, had to have the whip withdrawn. That area just looks, the Conservative Party looks squalid. But it's also a symptom of the collapse of Conservative credibility and collapse of responsibility. And I think that's what we're seeing across the country. And I think that's what we've seen for a while in Westminster. And I think a general election will only play out in the same way, unless there's some dramatic change. That dramatic change could be effected if Rishi Sunak took on better advice. I don't think it's beyond complete redemption. I think it's almost inevitable that the Labour Party will be the next government. But the complete abolition and destruction of the Conservative Party is not inevitable if Sunak were to take some advice. But I don't think at the moment he's open to that advice or being or actually being given access to that sort of advice. But he needs to start speaking for himself, start answering questions, start taking responsibility. Because if he doesn't take responsibility, he leads this bland brigade of MPs in business suits, and the Labour Party is no better at this, by the way. We're getting to a point where you could flip one into the other and you wouldn't notice the difference, except for a mild change in some policies. This bland politics doesn't show commitment. It shows a business sense, possibly. If I want business sense, I just go and buy a newspaper from W.H. Smith. And W.H. Smith, as we all know, W.H. Smith was famous because he became Lord of the Admiralty without having any Navy ability. He was a shopkeeper. And he is the archetype of the fellow in HMS Pinafore, the Gilbert and Sullivan piece, who polished up the handle on the big front door. I polished up the handle so carefully that now I am the ruler of the Queen's Navy. And this idea of a brigade of interchangeable individuals, all in suits with straight ties, is I think not a recipe for success. It's a recipe for contrived compliance.